Alright, so hey everyone, today I want to take a look at Resident Evil 8 and its Deadzones. This is the pre-release demo, but it's almost guaranteed to be the case for the retail release. But to jump straight into it, the camera uses about a 31% rounded square dead zone, and of course that means it's a little larger in the corners. 31% is a pretty large dead zone size, but the series has used this for quite a while, so it's nothing better or worse than it has been. You can see just how much stick movement you can make without anything occurring in-game. There is quite a bit of restricted diagonal movement around the axes. You can see that I can make these bobbing motions, and the cursor will move perfectly left. They even point at very obvious angles and have it move perfectly left. It's very obvious when looking straight up or down. You don't see diagonal movement occur until you break out of these regions. Movement uses the exact same dead zone, so you can see that the character will begin moving once you break out of this. The restricted diagonal movement is a little more difficult to see, but you can see that I'm making bobbing motions and the character is moving perfectly forward. The only unique thing to this dead zone is the shaded region, which represents the sprint threshold. So if you try sprinting when your stick is beneath this region, nothing will happen. If you try sprinting when the stick is within this region, you'll start sprinting. If you're sprinting and you fall out of this region, you'll stop sprinting. So if you fall under it, or if you make too drastic an angle, you'll stop sprinting. Unsurprisingly, this is the exact same dead zone, or the exact same dead zones that were used in Resident Evil 7. The only unfortunate thing is Resident Evil 2 Remake used 30% circular dead zones, so that was a pretty big improvement. With circular dead zones, you can exit the dead zone from the same distance off any angle, and circular dead zones don't normally restrict diagonal movement, so you could have full diagonal movement. You had full diagonal movement in Resident Evil 2 Remake. With this kind of dead zone, all these blue regions mean that the stick is only outputting 4 directions in these blue regions, as in perfectly right, up, left, and down. So a huge portion of your stick is only outputting 4 directions, which can make it feel quite a bit clunkier than it is. And as far as the size, 30%, as I said, is large, and it would be nice to see dead zone options added. Thankfully, the camera acceleration options from Resident Evil 7 have come back, so that's nice to see. But it would be nice to have dead zone options offered, probably like 0% to 30% or so, because lower dead zones make it easier to make accurate adjustments, as well as just make the controls feel more responsive. And ideally for both movement and the camera. The camera is important because that's where your actual precision is needed, but it does help for movement a bit too. For circular dead zones, the thing I'd request is changing this to a circular dead zone like the one that was used in Resident Evil 2 Remake. I think that'd be a good change, but if they wanted to preserve this dead zone, they actually could by simply offering separate radial and axial dead zones. These rounded square dead zones are simply created by putting setting up a circular dead zone on top of an axial dead zone. So they probably already have separate values for these, so they could offer those. Of course, offering both radial and axial dead zones for both the camera and the movement would bloat options, being 4 options between them, but that would be pretty helpful. the next thing is the camera speed. The cap right now is 9, and while that is pretty decent, it's still reasonably slow compared to a lot of other games. And if you want to turn around kind of almost instantly, you kind of have to rely on the slow turn. Since there are sensitivity options though, I mean, this option could allow us to do that. So something else I'd request is just increasing the cap for this option for players that want it. So instead of the cap being 9, it could be 15 or even 20 to allow players to turn very quickly. Lastly is the acceleration curve, an option for to control the acceleration curve. For those unaware, the curve is how your acceleration increases with stick input. So as you can see, you start out extremely slow and then builds up and then steeps up pretty rapidly at the end. I'm playing on max sensitivity right now, and you can see with just how slow it starts, this might feel kind of sluggish to some players. So that's the benefit of having an option to control this. If an option were added, it could say control a degree of a power function, where the lowest value, and they could even follow these from 0 to 9, and where 0 could be a linear curve, and say 9 could be a quadratic curve, and then just increment in between them so players could granularly choose the curve they want to use. This would be helpful for players that say want to use a low sensitivity where this current curve would make things feel a little too sluggish. But players who want a very fast sensitivity, they could use a higher degree curve and still be able to make precise adjustments easily. So to sum up, it'd be nice to get Deadzone size options. These make accurate adjustments more easy and controls more responsive in general. Changing the Deadzone shape to a circle, or adding separate options for the axial and radial components of the Deadzone, so that players are able to choose if they want to use a circular Deadzone, a square Deadzone, or some various mix of the two. Increasing the camera sensitivity cap from 9 to maybe 15 to 20. And lastly, having an acceleration curve option that goes from a linear curve to a quadratic curve. That would give players a ton of control over their camera controls and make the controller gameplay and console gameplay controls feel quite a bit better. But that's about it. Thanks for watching. Hopefully these options can be added at some point during the game's lifetime. But otherwise, thanks, and everyone, have a good rest of your day.